Who likes puzzles? I'm sure there's enough people that watch this channel that love puzzles. Who likes procrastination? I'm sure we all do that. Who likes big computers? I sure hope we all do. This was something that I picked up in April of 2023. It is now late August 2023. And I need to get myself lit on fire to get this done, because there is a lot to be done here, and there's a reason why everything has been exploded apart in this computer. This is the IBM System 32. It is a single-person computer, sometimes dubbed the Bionic Desk, because as you can see, the computer itself is an enormous desk. Now, how enormous is it? I've made this template to explain. There we go. So, we're looking at a length of 70 inches, a width of 27 inches. It's only 38 inches tall, but look at that weight, 640 pounds. It's a relief that this thing is on wheels, otherwise this would be a pain in the ass to move. And yet it's completely dismantled. So, when I got this machine, it was in a basement in Castlegar, British Columbia. The business that had it doesn't really know when it showed up or when it got there. The date stamps on this say it was manufactured between 1976 and 1977. But to get it out of the basement, no easy task at all. There was a significant amount of planning. Like, this was actually a deal that was made in like November of last year. And the idea is that we would show up with a trailer and we would have to almost completely dismantle the machine. Then we could upend it, slide it down a narrow hallway, then carry it up a flight of stairs, into a backyard, push it down a hill, and into the waiting trailer, and then load it up and send it over here. Well, thankfully, that's all been done now. Now comes the fun part of reassembling it. And while I reassemble it, I'm going to clean it out as well, because I can't necessarily say this one is bad, because we can take a look over here and say, oh, hey, look, no possums, if you get that joke. But for the rest of it, I mean, there's some dirt in here, there's some crustiness here, there's some of IBM's famous foam that's in here. I want to clean some of that out. And all the components that you're seeing that are missing here, don't worry, I have every single piece. Except for one thing, and that is the mirror box that sits on top. Also, I want to point out to here, you see this rust? That wasn't me. That wasn't anything I did. When we took the top off here, we realized that there was rust in here. So at some point in the past, this thing's gotten wet. How exactly? We don't exactly know. But as I put this thing back together, let's kind of take a look at some of the hardware that's in this and go from there. I love it when it comes off kind of in sheets like this. That's just glue. We can leave that behind. Oh, this is the good IBM foam. Doesn't turn into a black sludge when compressed, but it also doesn't turn to dust. It actually maintains its consistency enough that you can actually pull these pieces off. Now, I should save this to template it. Whatever. I don't think the noise dampening is going to matter in this case. We'll just get it out of there. The glue, if I was really desperate, I could take it off. I don't believe it's an acidic solvent. It's not going anywhere. It's fine. As I'm coming across tags that have fallen off, I am trying to glue them back down again. I still have to go through all of this with compressed air, but there's no point doing that until I at least give it a wipe down. Okay, I spoke too soon. This sheet of foam here with the protective layer, this is actually used in the logic gates to kind of cushion and hold the boards pushed in, so I will have to replace this when I'm done. But this is the foam I was afraid of, because if I push on it, it's sticky underneath and it leaves a residue that's also sticky on my hand. This is the bad foam. This is the stuff that ends up causing, like, it just makes a complete bloody mess. So I got to be very careful with these, and I'll scrape that off, and I'll have to find some foam that I can put back on here. I think I have some, but I'm using it right now for another project. Okay, it's off now. Just a little pile. It's great what a very sharp edged putty knife will do, but as you can see, now has this black tar all along that lip that will get everywhere. So this tool now just needs to be cleaned with a solvent, and then I can get back to working on the rest of this. Look at the amount of dust in here. I don't think this thing was cleaned for quite a while. So this will be fun to blow out. Also, the logic cage has these little elastic band X things. They kind of go over these posts and hold the wires down. The reason I didn't dewire and remove the whole logic gate was simply because you touch these or look at these wrong, these just shatter. These will never come off again. So we just left that in place and just dewired everything else. So what is the System 32 beyond the Bionic desk? Well, the history for this machine actually goes back to the System 3, which was available from IBM a number of years earlier. The big thing that you'll notice with the System 3 is that it is absolutely massive. It looks like a mainframe, but it is not a mainframe. It is a general purpose batch processing system. I don't even think this will do timeshare. Hold on. But the main issue is that, that was a machine designed for borderline large businesses, medium-sized businesses, small businesses if they wanted to be really ambitious. You could rent or lease those machines. But there were still a lot of businesses that a general computer just wasn't available to because, well, the System 3 was just way too big. So a number of years later, the System 32 came out. As you can see here, the System 32 has a very rectangular footprint, especially once I have the console box sitting on top of here. It is dimensionally sized so that it will fit through almost any doorway in an office. It may make most corners. You can tip this up on its end if you want to during transport, and you can just swing it in through a doorway. Surprisingly, that works. As we can see here, it dismantles quite well, if need be, to move it into very specific locations. It doesn't require a ton of power. This requires I think it was 8 or 9 or 10 amps at 220 volts, single phase, which most offices have. This doesn't require air conditioning. It doesn't require very specific needs, and at the end of the day, it also makes a great desk. But this was available $1,000 a month, lease or rental. This is not a time-sharing machine. You cannot run this computer and have a bunch of terminals hanging off of it. The idea here is that the keyboard goes here. There is a hard copy output printer that goes here. And the gross majority of your output is going to be coming out of this printer. This hole here, there's a CRT that's mounted vertically in here, and there's a mirrored wedge box that sits here that's aimed towards the operator, and that there gives system result codes, errors, job status, and it displays them. It's not actually like the main output window for the system. That's what the printer is here for. But even though I said this is not designed for terminals in mind, there is a terminal, or not terminal, there's a modem option that is available. That usually hides right around in here. There's an extra control panel, and I believe there's some extra boards. I've never seen it. This one obviously didn't come with it as well either. But the actual computer lives in that box right there. So in IBM speak, this is known as the logic cage, or the logic door, or the logic gate. One of those. As you can see, it does swing like a gate, so logic gate sounds like the most reasonable explanation. I'm going to pull that pin there, there we go. And the computer comprises of, surprise, circuit boards. Now, these boards here look like they use solid logic technology. They don't. They use that square metal canned thing IBM loved, but it's more of a successor to SLT. They're hybrid modules. There's a few other ICs in here from Texas Instruments and the likes, but they've all been rebranded and remarked by IBM, so God only knows what they really are. But that one there is somewhat full. I'm believing that the CPU, the control memory, the floppy controller, and the hard disk controller is there. And above here, this one's a bit more empty. There's lots of expansion left in here. I believe other options that existed for this, there is an SDLC option, which allows you to connect to the modem, a magnetic check sorter, or an IBM 129 key punch with a specific option, which then allows you to use that 129 as both a card reader and a card puncher. I mean, it's great to overlap some of your other product lines. That's totally fine. I do believe there's, I forget the name of the more high-density punch card thing that IBM released for the System 3. The thing that most people didn't like. Well, that was also available as well, and you could use it over SDLC. I believe there is a mathematical performance option available for this, which then allows for, God, okay, I can't close this gate. Fortran, or was it COBOL? That's actually an option on the system here. Functionally, I don't know if this can compile it otherwise. But what this can compile and work with is RPG, or Report Program Generator. Because, much like my AS400 many years ago, which unfortunately I had to give away, it turned out to be just a complete basket case, these systems here are not designed for games. They're not necessarily designed for databases for multiple users to access. Just like the AS400, this is a business computer. So what do you get? Inventory management, general ledger, payroll, accounts payable, ordering, and sales order management. Absolutely exciting software is available through this thing. Your input and output through that would be through a floppy drive, which lives down there. The hard disk that hides inside of here, you had your options of 5, 10, and either it was 12 or 15 megabytes. That is not your typical ST225 hard drive living in there. Anyways, now that we've wiped this down, I'm going to start loading things back into it. Let's start with the floppy drive. This is the IBM 33FD 8-inch flexible disk storage drive. This here is the successor to the IBM 23FD, but that's known as the Minnow drive. That's a very, very special drive because that one was typically used for loading microcode and small patches and what have you in the field for IBM mainframe equipment. This, however, was something very special because it now allowed for not only reading of disks, but writing of disks. This has a formatted disk capacity of, and IBM has their own way of handling bits and bytes, EBCDIC, so it's somewhere around 230 kilobytes of formatted storage onto an 8-inch floppy disk. Here's an example of a piece of software. Unfortunately, it's had Xenix installed on it, but you just simply have this latch, pull that open. You can take your disk, which is an 8-inch floppy disk, which looks otherwise absolutely the same. It's not hard sectored either. And that just slides in and closes. Now, the idea with this drive is that it would be used for loading software and diagnostics into the machine. It can be used to produce backup copies of your software and the hard disk in the machine. But it is also used for data entry. You see, the whole IBM Diskette 1 thing is not necessarily exclusive or new to the System 32. If you had an IBM 3470 data entry station, you would be inputting all of your user data and information onto these floppy disks. So it is by no surprise that this drive, and especially the System 32, supports 3740 data formats. You would use those input stations, or you'd have other people inputting data on those, instead of stacks of punch cards. You could then store whatever input was there conveniently on one floppy disk. It's flexible, it's durable, and unlike a deck of cards, if you drop it, it doesn't scatter the cards everywhere. And then you could just put it into the drive, you could have the machine read the data or the data files off of that and begin processing the data. You didn't even have to be at the computer to be doing that. This doesn't have an auto changer on it. The later IBM System 34 did add that, so you could put groups of disks in there, and then you could batch job a large volume of floppy disks or handle backups automatically. The drive itself is constructed to standards that we would consider non-standard. This is definitely not a Shugart mechanism. This is IBM's own creation. This connector down here is simply just power for the AC motor, for the spindle motor that's constantly spinning. There's all of our drive's logic right here. It plugs in through one of IBM's absurd connectors right down in there. This is a stepper motor, but it uses the most bizarre, most absurd system. Can I get my finger on it? There we go. Most absurd system. Can you see that? There. Uses the most absurd system to position the heads. It's so weird. And yes, it is a multi-phase stepper motor. It looks like a shaded pull motor. Really strange. But it comes on this bracket here. It has these captive screws, grounding strap, and then this just slides right back into the machine. And here's the hard drive that goes into the System 36. This little Seagate ST1 drive. Nah, I'm just kidding for you. This is the hard drive that goes into the System 32. This is the 62 GV fixed disk drive. Fixed head drive is a little bit of an understatement. We can clearly see that this is a voice coil style device here. And it is, I believe, a 5 megabyte disk. The other ones just simply added capacities by simply adding more physical platters, I believe. But no, like hand for size. My hand's the size of the spindle. This disk is an absolute monster. So it does all of its interfacing over here. There's a couple of amplifier boards that live out in this bracket here. And the motor itself, or the disc itself, is spun up with this motor here. General Electric, 1/6 horsepower, 230 volts, with a manual overload reset. Brake assembly is on the very end here, which just allows the drive to more quickly spin itself down. I'm not going to spin this thing around, but this here just simply goes to a terminal block there. There is a band or belt that goes across over to here, and yes, I have both locked the spindle so it won't turn, and there's also a latch that lives up here that locks the heads as well. So this was properly stored and latched before I transported this thing and took it out. It is in excellent condition. I'm not seeing anything on the fault label here. And when it comes to the flag defect sectors, none. So this drive, in theory, should be fine, except for one thing. We don't know if the heads are sticking. If the heads are stuck to the platter here, well, there's really not much you can do about that, unfortunately, other than just kind of cross your fingers and hope they aren't, because you rip the heads off or you leave a mark on this disc. Well, that's the end of that for this system. And you do need the hard drive to run the system control program. Yes, I do find it kind of funny that this is called SCP that runs this computer. And without the drive, that ain't going to work. This is a bit more tedious to install in there, but this is one of the bulk reasons why the system is so large, because this has to fit in the cabinet. Actually, I'm going to flip this around so you can take a look at this. So there's that terminal block I was talking about right there. And yes, like everything else with this, I did make a note of where each wire went on this thing here. IBM also likes to numerically label all of their terminals. Here is the belt from the motor up to the spindle hub. It actually has a spring tensioner right there. And this is one of your two locks. So this one here locks the spindle in place. So just loosen those two screws, slide that back, and the spindle is now free. To lock the spindle, make sure it gets to that position there somehow. I believe it says in the documentation which way to rotate the hub, and only rotate the hub until they get into alignment so you can then lock it. And then the other one here is this giant physical latch here, and I can just simply just snap it into one position or the other. And the heads are currently locked. And this is the heavy cast aluminum frame that everything sits on. And actually, it also sits on top of shock absorbers. You have one that lives up here, and then you have another one that's here, and another one that's sitting over here. So that's kind of fun to put in here. The HEPA filter fits right here. I do believe that is actually a sealed portion of the drive. It's not serviceable. And the floppy drive is in there. Again, there's the two screws there, and it just kind of latches into the bar on the back side there. And you can see there's our CE panel right there. And then the disk drive doesn't actually sit squarely or straight inside the unit. So Sits on the shock absorber there, another one there. It's all bolted up there. I'm going to keep the heads and the spindle locked until I'm ready to work on this thing. It might as well leave it secure right now. And on the back side, well, wiring still needs to be done, but at least it's a hell of a lot cleaner in here now. I will just kind of casually lay the cabling out for now and get the ground straps in. I won't finish wiring until everything else is in place. Let's move on to that now. Oh man, Bob Barker's dead at 99. Damn. So this nicely shielded box here is the video display in the System 32. It's your only CRT in there. Hello, our neck hides way the heck in there. It's actually really well protected to a degree, but oh my god. Here, let me just see if I can flip this out without damaging it. Okay, sure. So what IBM did here, instead of having just a narrow little CRT, they have a considerably larger tube that they were using, and like a third of the tube is not actually used. So you can see there's our display burn-in right there. There is the portion of the tube that just simply never got used. Oh hey, there's a paper clip right there. Neat. Yeah, that's gross. I'm going to take a moment to clean that up. Unfortunately, I'm probably going to lose... Yeah, I'm going to lose this foam seal here, but okay, whatever. I can remember to myself I have to make another one. Oh, that cleaned up pretty good. So we can see that, yeah, this section here is like brand new phosphor. Never been used. And there's our burn-in right there. That's that small area. Now, I've had a couple people actually ask me questions. Why not just flip the entire tube over and then I have a brand new section of phosphor? Well, I mean, I can, but it introduces some new challenges. First one is that... Can I get some better light in here? There we go. The first is that the anode cap is right there. And it goes to the flyback transformer, which hides on the other side. It wouldn't clear this if it was on that side. The other thing I'd have to deal with is the fact that all the wiring here would be 180 degrees off. I don't think I have enough wiring in the harness to be able to let me to flip this around 180 degrees. But there's a green filter that goes over this anyways, so you'll never know. Alright, I'm going to put this back together here and we'll pop it back in. Also, while this is going back together, I am looking at date codes. So the flyback transformer is dated November 19th, 1974. The wiring harness here for the display is September 15th, 1975. I think the latest I've seen on this was October 1975. Okay, the monitor is reinstalled. So the way this works here, if you can see in the darkness, is that I have a bolt right here, and there's just a metal peg here. So the idea is that the whole assembly goes up, pushes back, so it's now latched into place. It's not going to fall down, and then you just simply tighten the screws on either sides, bolts, screws. You get the idea. And then from that point there, well, now you can just kind of look down. It's worth pointing out everything is mirror backwards. Again, like the box here has a mirror, so everything is reversed here, becomes left to right legible when you look at the screen. The cabling for it, I've also, again, I labeled it, but I photographed it, so that plugs in there. I have this here, which actually goes to the CE panel here, and there is right here an adjustment knob for display intensity, which is, you know, brightness. Okay, so that's back in place there. Let's see if I can get the power supply reinstalled again. Well, there's the power supply reinstalled. Well, with the exception of the panels. There's still a fair bit of final wiring to put in there, but as you can see, IBM does a really nice job labeling all of their connectors and terminals. My photographs will help with the rest of it. So, this is a serious mystery to me. Also, it's a little bit of a disappointment. So, every System 32 I've seen up until now uses a ferroresonant, i.e. linear, power supply. So you have an enormous ferroresonant transformer here. No, it's not that, and no, it's not the one that's hiding there. This one, however, has a switch mode power supply. These scare me. With linear power supplies, you can bring those up on a Variac. That's not a problem at all. Switch mode power supplies, on the other hand, especially switch mode power supplies from this era, are not as intelligent as modern switch mode power supplies. I'm not going to tell you to go and short out your Meanwell or your laptop power supply. Those power supplies will just simply shut down if there's an abnormal condition on the output. These typically will not. Furthermore, we have giant, intimidating, massive caps that are hiding on this thing. They have to be reformed still. I can actually service and reach those from both sides. There's the lugs, and if I just unscrew those, they slide out the other side of the power supply, which hides underneath the console frame here. But I have to make sure everything is perfect in this power supply. Otherwise, it goes pop. That's the end of it. Little things like that one little metal can integrated circuit right there, like you pop that, you won't even see that it's gone popped. It has the metal can there, but good luck finding that. That just basically makes this all junk. And this is not a power supply that's made by like OEM from Meanwell or Delta or one of those big power supply brands. No. This is IBM. This is all IBM, all over the place. 5 volts and 12 volts? Absolutely, those are going to be available. Other voltages? Very likely. One thing I would like to point out is that this is where the AC line input comes in. Those lugs there, there's no refis in this. This is just an enormous AC filter right here. Like, this whole thing is amazing. Look how thick. Like, listen how loud that is. Look how thick this metal is. Like, anything happens on the AC side here, it's amazingly well shielded. And then it has these 2 little tiny wires and it's grounded, and it comes out and goes into here. And the power sequencing system, I believe, is controlled by this card over here. I have to double check. Anyways, let's continue on with adding more components to the system. The CE panel is really not a location for the operator or the owner of the machine to be hanging around. In fact, there's many things about this which are a complete mystery and no documentation talks about, primarily because it expects the IBM customer engineer to know all of it. There is a little bit of a cheat sheet that lives on the back side of the door that covers it over, but for the most part, they really don't want you going in here at all unless it was absolutely necessary. That being said, you do get yourself a control panel to handle, well, the more day-to-day and routine operations of the machine. So here's our power switch right here. The actual big red switch on this machine is that right there. So not really as impressive, but there's a big red switch. This one here is just a little black switch, not a button. You have this button here, which is load. The load button just simply starts the IPL process. And you have these 2 buttons here, stop and start. This stops the system processor. This one starts it again for whatever reasons. You also then have your user your operator output lights. Keyboard is ready for input. And then you have your 3 error conditions. Processor check indicates that some sort of hardware error has occurred with the computer. Thermal check, or TH check, there's thermal sensors located there, and I think there's another one hiding around inside of here. But otherwise, if the machine gets too hot, it will trip that light on and it'll shut the system down. The idea is that this light will stay on even if you turn the machine off. Unless you unplug the machine, it remembers that there was a thermal check. The same goes with the power check. If there's obviously something that happens with the power supply, the main power supply will shut itself down, but the auxiliary or standby power supply, which, for example, keeps the power switch circuit running, that's still going to have power for the power sequencing card. The power sequencing card will remember the last fault in it, including the power check. Alright, we're going to have to talk about it. So here's the keyboard. Easy enough to put in. Cabling was left in there. 2 screws there, 2 screws in there. Yeah, I'm happy the keyboard's here. This is actually the reason why I ended up buying this computer in the first place. You know, I said buy instead of, well, pick this up. The machine was free. I'll make that clear right now. The machine was free. But when it showed up for free, they got bombarded with emails by people saying either, 1, I'll be there in X amount of time and I'll come pick it up, or could you just take the keyboard out? The rest of it's not worth anything. I came into this fully aware that this was free. But at the same time, I don't care for keyboards. I don't. Whatever. It's a user input device. If you see this as some sort of object of social status, if you see this as an ego stroke, if you see this as some device where you will take offense at not using the keyboard you like, there may be something wrong with you. That's also pot calling the kettle black, because when I contacted about this machine, I gave them $500 and assurances I will be there in several months, come the melt of the snow, to pick this machine up. And I got the machine. So yes, I have the keyboard, it's installed, it's staying there. And this is the reason why I ended up getting this machine. Now, on a much lighter note, I think we can move on to installing the printer. This is the printer assembly. Now, that I'm aware of, the System32 was available in two options. You had the heavy-duty band line printer, which would produce a lot of paper, especially if you were generating a lot of regular reports. And then you had this, which was the light duty, which is just a dot matrix printing system with the ribbon that is stored away in this compartment here. And yes, it does use those ridiculous foam rollers, and yes, those foam rollers are absolutely crap. So, cool. Okay, so that's not currently working right now. Apparently, as well, System Source has told me that there is a daisy wheel option that was also available for the System32. One, I have never seen it, and two, it seems a little ridiculous since every application I knew for daisy wheel at the time was word processing. This is overkill for word processing. But it did have a substantial amount of paper dust in it, so I've cleaned that out. The carriage is free. It doesn't tell me the print heads are free or not. The platen is in here. Platen turns great. There is a fan in there. The fan turns. This machine was just pretty much turned off when it was done, so everything in it's in great shape. Cards in here are good. I just reseated those. We'll talk about this power connector here in a moment. The only thing that's really wrong with this is this. This is the paper out switch, and it just simply sits in here, and when you run out of paper, the switch extends out, and then just tells the computer, oh, you're out of paper. Someone has gone and bent that tab so it always indicates it has paper in it. So that's one little fix I'm just going to make here. There we go. Watch me regret that later, but it's just a micro switch. It's easy enough to bypass. So remember how I said the power supply is probably more than just 5 and 12? Yeah. This machine is wired for 48 volts. It's referring to the printer here being 48 volts, which I find hilarious because this is the connector that it uses to power itself. It's just absurd. But okay, I guess that's the way that works. What's interesting about this makes me believe that this printer assembly is definitely not designed purpose-built for this machine. It's been adapted to work on this. God only knows what other devices IBM used this in. Display writers? No idea. But the cable comes down, and it comes down to here. And this was one of my other big problems I ran into when I was unwiring this, and I'm afraid of for all of these terminals as well, is that sure, the line wire came off no problem. The neutral wire actually broke. That was just me, I pulled it off and the two ends just and fell right away, and that was it, just dust in the wind. So that'll have to be recrimped before I can do anything. Again, I know where everything is wired, and we're getting pretty darn close here to the point where I have to start wiring things in. Alright, and an hour or so later here, we have a lot of the wiring cleaned up, all the extra harness bits installed. The hard drive is installed, the floppy drive is installed. I've gone through here, taken care of all the wiring back here, so that's all been tested, that's all been plugged in. That's all been good, that's all good there. The zip ties had to be replaced, but whatever. I even got the power supply all plugged in, wired in, and buttoned up here. So at this point here, we're ready to start putting the side panels back on this thing, and even the top. Really, there's no point to make a video on that one there. I'll just make each one on. If I run into an issue with hanging the door hinges again, we'll talk about that. Here's the official data plate that's on the computer. It's hiding next to the disk drive and the logic gate. So this is machine serial number 13159. The main branch circuit voltage is 230 volts. It does want a 15 amp circuit, but it seems here maximum continuous load is only 3.5 amps. So really it's just the inrush current. Other than that, looks like it was at one point a leased unit. This also came with my System 32. This IBM box. Mike Ross of the Core Store actually received a similar box when he got his, and the contents of it is actually somewhat of the same as well. So let's go through here. So we have a bunch of these little tiny IBM internal mail packets. This one here has a board extender, but it's only single width, so it's probably used for connection troubleshooting. We have this one here, which has broken plastic clips from inside the machine. I put those ones in there. We have this envelope, which contains red jumper wire, which is actually becoming sticky and beginning to degrade. This envelope here, which contains, I'm not entirely sure, and a sticker off of something. Not entirely sure on that one as well. And some lock washers. And this piece of plastic, again, I don't know what the heck that goes to. So we'll leave that in there. And then I have, so we have this little plastic insert here. I've seen this hanging around somewhere on some of the logic cards in the gate. And there's a nice new one. And then these little tiny metal hooks. I don't know what on earth those are used for. They don't look like puller tools. But they are the same size. Interesting. I wonder what those do. So there's 3 of those. There's this. This is the green lens that, or filter that goes over the CRT. So I assume what happens in the 32 is that that's actually not a green phosphor display. It's a white phosphor display. And it has this filter which goes over, and it uses that like foam, which we took off, to hold it in place, and that gives you the green display. And lastly, we have this little box here. Mike Ross has the exact same tool. First off, it's full of degraded foam, but you get this little thing. And I mean, what is it for? Well, I can actually tell you what that's for. If you look in the service documentation for the System 32, this is a CE tool for the floppy drive. I forget if it's an alignment tool or if it's a multi-purpose tool, but it specifically screws onto the spindle inside of the floppy drive and is used to hold things in place while you make adjustments. That came with it in this horrifically degrading foam box. I'm going to have to change the foam in this thing. But this box here was just living inside of the machine. Every time. Gotta pull the cables out to put the damn panel in. You know, it's funny how YouTube works sometimes. I actually did a few more videos after I put the panels on, but when I went to go edit it last night, I actually got content matches on it because the people down the street were playing music loud enough it actually picked it up on the camera. Alright, well, let's do this again. So, as you can see, all of the panels have been reinstalled. Everything's been given a nice little wipe down and clean. I think the biggest pain in the butt here, besides that stupid panel here, which required this whole top assembly to be unbolted, slid out, and then popped in, was just the doors. Lots of screws on these here. They all have to be angled and aligned and just perfectly set, as well as the top panel here. When you bolt it in with 5 different bolts, you have to center it correctly. Everything has to line up. And as a result, you do get some weird fitment issues, but whatever. But other than that, those slots, by the way, that you're seeing here, you just simply push a screwdriver through and it releases the latch, unless it's the end door there, in which case you have to open it from this door. But these just latch into place. So, I finally have this system back together, and as we can see here, it Looks absolutely beautiful with the dot matrix option, but visibly we can see this is what we're missing. So, what I'm missing here is a triangular shaped box. It has a single mirror in it. There is a filter that goes down in here. Surprise, surprise, that's actually a white phosphor display, I'm pretty sure of. Otherwise, why have a green filter in there? And the idea is that, and I'll use this chair here as an example, you will be sitting at the machine and you can be working. Here's your data output, but all system information, application information, and what have you is available on that little tiny screen right there. So without that, well, this isn't going to really help you a whole heck of a lot because you really need that screen. And otherwise you got to lean over and then the image is going to be upside down for you. So I'm not sure where to find that box. A piece of cardboard and a mirror will do for now, but you can definitely tell that something's missing from there, and it's kind of important. So I really don't know. Really, I've only seen those on single user data entry stations and on the System 32. And I'm sure there's a shortage of them because, as you can see, these are just centering bolt holes. So that box comes off, and I'm sure there's many other machines out there where at some point this got converted into a table, that went off, and it just disappears. Am I missing anything else? No? There's not even a whole heck of a lot of wear on this thing. It's really nice. All right. This also came with it, and as you can see, it's incredibly brittle. This was actually in one piece when I got it, and just by careful handling, even just kind of like compressing it in the pages of a book, it was just breaking apart. So that template's no good on it anymore. It's not paper, but it's also not plastic. I'm not entirely sure what that material is. Of course I have green bar paper for this, but okay, that's fine. The other thing that I'm missing, I think I mentioned this, is that there's supposed to be a little wire rack or a stand that comes out here, and the idea is that you set your stack of green bar paper here, and then it can feed into the printer, and then it can fall back out again. I'm missing that as well, but that's not as necessary. You can just kind of put the box of paper on the floor if you so desire, and that's fine. Oh, right, there is one thing I'm missing. Let's follow this cable here. I'd love to demo the machine right now. Now, it isn't the situation that I don't have a twist lock outlet. I definitely have twist locks. Remember, this requires 220, 230 volts. I am surprisingly one of those individuals who does not yet have an EV charger or a welding outlet or anything in the car park and garage. So, right now, I can't run this thing. Bit of a shame, but I guess that's how the end of it was. I only really wanted to show you how to assemble this machine in this video. We have done that. It looks absolutely fantastic. And for those of you who have been anxious for many months for me to assemble this machine again, here you go. This is a nice, clean, Canadian System 32. Thank you for watching, and until next time, have a good one.